who is using VCR head cleaner really? And the answer is probably different than you'd expect. So nobody is really talking about poppers. Now, poppers are those things labeled VCR head cleaner or room deodorizer or nail polish remover or leather cleaner. They're little bottles that you will see at sex shops as well as places like clubs, and you'll see people actually sniffing them. So that is a popper. It is a form of nitrite, and basically it's a vasodilator. So what it's doing is it is relaxing your blood vessels, and in doing so, that also does things like relaxes your muscles, which makes it easier to participate in things like anal sex. So the primary group of people who typically use poppers and who have for years been seen as the main consumer of poppers is men who have sex with men, which by the way is the scientific term. Now, I recently did another video on poppers just talking about kind of the complete and utter lack of research that we have on it and why that scares me. Like, when we have things that interact with the central nervous system, it makes me a little bit nervous. So I was like, yeah, we should probably do more research on this. And people in the comments rightfully said that one of the reasons we probably don't have research is something like homophobia. So the primary consumer of this type of drug is gay men. And we see that, they haven't been treated fairly by science in the past. You can look at things like the HIV/AIDS epidemic where, there was an incredibly delayed response. There was a lack of funding. There are all sorts of problems attributed to homophobia. And that homophobia and bias is still rampant in the United States, which sometimes plays a role in things like research. This lack of research and kind of underground status in relation to other drugs means that we are not getting the appropriate information out to people who actually need it. So, for example, we see that there are now increasing numbers of poisonings reported every year from things like poppers. And in fact, in the majority of those cases, now slight majority, but still majority of those cases, what you see is that those poisonings are caused by people who are actually just drinking poppers. And in my last video, I mentioned this and people are like, people don't drink poppers. Yeah, hundreds of people per year drink poppers. And this is actually potentially fatal. So the lack of information is actually leading people to imbibe this improperly, to the point that it is very problematic. But what you see is that, we don't know how safe it is in general. So it seems pretty safe. People in the community say that it's relatively safe, but we don't have kind of long-term data. We don't even have a lot of acute data, so we don't know what's necessarily happening when people take them. And people say that it is potentially problematic. So we see that in 10% of cases, when people take them, they said that there were adverse events, like some to the level that it actually required somebody to go and help them. And these are things like an extreme headache. This is dizziness. So people are potentially just feeling incredibly lightheaded. And it makes sense when you think about how this drug actually works. And so, as I mentioned, we don't have the long-term data either. So what we see is that people are actually using these longer and longer. So we have the elder millennials who use these in their 20s that are now growing up. And so we have people using their poppers into relatively older ages after long periods of use. And we have no idea what long-term use of poppers is going to do. It could do nothing. It could do something. It could do a series of slightly problematic things, or maybe only problematic things in a specific group of people. We have no clue. And now we see rates of popper use climbing and climbing. So we had 10% of people who were in the New York City EDM nightclub scene. That's the kind of goalpost of researchers to see what the next forefront of drugs is going to be. We look at people who are using a lot of drugs, which seem to be the people who are in New York City EDM nightclubs. Sorry for the stereotyping there, but that is scientifically valid. So we see that 10% of this population was using poppers in 2017, and in 2024, that went up to 30% of people. So we're talking about a substantial increase in the number of people. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, who is actually using them? It used to be men who have sex with men, and now it's basically everybody. So now it actually seems like females actually outrank males in terms of the number of people who use them. It used to be primarily gay men, and then it kind of moved more into just straight people. So we need to start doing this research. And I'm a little bit worried that we are now going to, just solely because it's being used in a different group of people. So this is like how we only started doing research on heroin when it crossed over into the wealthy white people subcategory. Hey, if the research gets done, I'm happy about that. And the research should benefit all communities. I just wish it wouldn't take so long to actually start doing this research because of things like bias. Until the research gets done, just keep keeping your communities safe like you have been, and keep spreading the word about things like, no, it is not a thing for people to drink. No, this is a thing that you should worry about if you don't like being dizzy. And let's actually destigmatize the use of some of these drugs so that we can, keep people safe.